Hi and welcome to Let's Talk, all about books, social media and good times going on in Auckland. Carole Beu's in shortly with an enticing great read from the shelves at the Women's Bookshop, and I'll be on about my word of the week, which is smoothie. This week's guest author is Madeleine Tobit, whose long love affair with Pacific Island life was the catalyst for a novel that's getting very good reviews. But first up, meet Courtney Peters from a hot online Auckland directory and event guide, Gather and Hunt. Hi Courtney, it's great to have you in Let's Talk. Now tell me about Gather and Hunt. I only just discovered you recently. Are there lots of people discovering you recently?
Quite a few discovering us recently because we just launched a new section of our site in which we adopt one suburb of Auckland per month, and we made a video for that which was really well received. So I think a lot of people have heard about us because of that.
Whole idea behind Gather and Hunt then?
Well, I guess it's a bit of a long story. I used to live in Melbourne. I moved back here in 2006 and I just felt like I didn't know what was going on. Coming from a city where there's so much going on, everyone's talking about it, to come back here and think, I know there are things going on but I don't know where they are. And I had a good friend called Alan who is a designer and web developer, and I said to him one night, we should make a website that's like a hub, a cultural place for people to go and find out what's happening. So then we started building it and then suddenly it snowballed and now here we are.
And here you are, up and running. So how long has Gather and Hunt been online?
We launched in September last year, so 11 months.
Right.
Yeah.
And so do you gather subscribers or members, or how do you judge your efficiency in getting people looking at the place?
We have a weekly newsletter, so we have a subscriber base for that, which I think is at 1,000 now, and obviously Facebook and Twitter and social media in general.
All of that sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah, we like that kind of thing.
Yeah, so would it tend to be a younger crowd, do you think, or are you getting people from right across the age spectrum?
We get a huge spectrum. We don't like to put an age group on them. We haven't tested exactly what the age is yet, but it's more about a mindset, people who like going out and experiencing their city. So I know it's predominantly 25 to 35, but there's definitely a big range.
What I like about it is that you've got a really refreshing style of writing on the site. I was reading something on your Facebook page and it said something like, hey, we've done you a newsletter, now go away and get that cup of coffee and come back and read because we've done this just for you. And it's really friendly and approachable, isn't it, in a way that you never get in a magazine or a newspaper. I mean, this is a whole new style of communication, isn't it?
Yeah, I think just the tendency with new media is it's so interactive that you do have to think a lot more about the reader when you're writing. And the fact that they could respond straight away.
On the other side of the screen there now, and they can be back in a second.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely a part of our approach. Also, we do want to be approachable. We didn't want to be too, website, I hate to use this term, but too cool.
Yes, or too lofty.
Yeah, we want everyone to come here and feel like Auckland's a fun place to be, and we're telling them why that's the case.
So coming back from Melbourne, a hot and happening town, you've found Auckland satisfying enough for you in terms of places to go and things to do?
Absolutely. I'd say when I first moved back in 2006, there was less things, but also I went out less. So as a result of starting Gather and Hunt, I've discovered so many amazing people doing interesting things and so many places that are opening that are really, really great. So I think Auckland's a really exciting place to be at the moment.
So when you say places, what sort of places? Are we talking food places, fashion places? What's going on?
I'm obsessed with food, so I would say generally I spend most of my time in food places. Something seems to open every week at the moment, which is just fantastic.
How do they all make a living is what amazes me.
Well, I think people in Auckland are more interested in going out as well, so there is a bigger market for that. The bar is just raising in terms of how good things are too. So
yeah. So some really nice new places you might like to recommend?
Well, I went to the new Mackenzie development on the shore in Takapuna last week. So there's a restaurant there called The Commons, and the head chef there is Nick Honeyman, and the food he makes is just incredible. It's really beautiful. It's casual, but it's also, it feels like fine dining, so you feel quite special when you're there.
North Shore could do with that.
Yeah, it's going to be an amazing development. They're putting Mexico in there, and they're putting a brilliant new cafe in, and they've got Ausk, the Danish bakery, in there as well. So
Mexico, you mean like the one that's down by the, not Wynyard Quarter, but down by Britomart.
Yeah.
Yes, I went there recently. It was fabulous. I just loved it.
It's such a fun place. It's very noisy. I mean, you wouldn't go there I wouldn't go there to take my grandparents there or, a family dinner, but I do like going down there. And
yes, but quick and tasty and really interesting decor and surrounds as well, which is wonderful.
Yeah, great atmosphere.
And what about around the ever popular Ponsonby Grey Lynn area? What's hot there now?
Well, Tin Soldier opened about a month ago, so that's a new shared dining experience. A lot of people have said it's quite similar to Depot on Federal Street. I found the food quite different there. I do really like it. It's very nostalgic. They have like mini lamb harissa hot dogs that are just like what you got at carnivals when you were a kid and things like that. So that appeals to me.
I've read a couple of reviews which say it's terrific and really good food, but they've complained about the noise level. Is that something that you noticed when you were there, or because you're only, however old you are, 20 something, that you don't even notice? Yes.
I have noticed that the music is loud there, but I did kind of enjoy it. I think they were playing Florence and the Machine when I was there, and yes. I just love her, so kind of worked for me.
That was fine. Yeah. And what about other hot fine dining places?
In Ponsonby, I absolutely love Ponsonby Road Bistro and Sunday Painters.
Sunday Painters?
Yeah, it's such a great name, isn't
wonderful
it?
title, yeah.
I think the people who owned it, yeah, they used to have a Sunday painting club and they decided to open a restaurant.
And whereabouts is that?
Just off the top of Franklin Road to the right.
Right.
Yeah, it has big, beautiful coloured curtains outside, so can't miss it.
And I've heard a few people talk about somewhere called Siddharth, which I have never been to, and I have no idea where that is either.
So that's in a strange location. I have a particularly soft spot for it because we've just had an event there. But it's in the Three Lamps arcade, and you walk through this fluorescent lighting place. It looks like a place you'd find a dentist, and you walk upstairs and there's a sliding door and there is just this beautiful dining room with an incredible view of the city. Wow. And plush turquoise everywhere and low lighting. It's really
sounds
lovely.
Fabulous. Yes.
And Sid Sarawat, who runs is the head chef there, he is a visionary. He creates the most amazing food. So we've been doing an 8-course degustation with him for 2 nights as part of our tasting club idea.
Now you rattle off that 8-course degustation very easily, but I venture to suggest that there might be a whole lot of people who don't know what that is. Degustation? What? Ooh, yes, explain, please.
So it's a tasting menu. I like to call it a performance that kind of unfolds before you over an evening, because it takes about 3 hours. But you sit down and you get, in the sit-out tasting one, you get, I think, three entrees, maybe 3 main courses, and then 2 desserts.
And are these just small tasting sort of plates, really?
Yeah,
no,
they are
not,
small.
Not
so by the
huge,
end,
yes.
by the end, you feel perfectly full. You don't feel overdone or anything. So it's a really beautiful experience. And what Sid does is he doesn't really have a menu. He just puts his 3 hero ingredients onto the menu, and then he brings out this dish. And so much work has gone into it. It's really, it blows you away. It really is like a performance, and it looks like art on the plate as well. So. Yeah.
And you're doing monthly tasting evenings, are you?
It's not just evenings, actually. So we've started partnering with some of our favourite businesses every month. Our first one was at Kokako, and it was a degustation breakfast, a 3-course breakfast. And our second one has been at Siddharth, a best of his test kitchen series, which is an 8-course degustation with wine match.
So if there are restaurant owners out there, or cafe owners, who'd like to get nudge into the pages at Gather and Hunt, should they just get in touch with you, or do you like to find places yourselves?
Oh, I like to do both. I do love it when people email me and say, you should come check this out, you know, and I like it even better when readers email me and say, I love this place, because we're all about personal recommendation. Yes,
I've just discovered somewhere in unlikely, like, I don't know, Teatatu or something, and you've got to go and try it. Yes.
Things that are far out of town are the best. We found a cakery the other day in Hillsborough called Bluebell's Cakery.
I've heard of it. Sounds wonderful.
Yes, Carla, who runs it, I don't know how she does it, but the cupcakes there are they're like pillows of joy. I mean, I just love them.
Pillows of Joy sounds like a good place to end. Thank you so much, Courtney, for coming in, and I'll watch Gather and Hunt with lots of interest.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Fruit smoothies have been around for years, but never have I heard so many of my friends talking about drinking what looks like green sludge. The green smoothie is the breakfast du jour, it seems, not to mention lunch and dinner as well, with oodles of foodies chopping up just about anything with green leaves, chucking it into the kitchen whiz with some token fruit and water, and pressing the button. After a minute or so of ear-splitting noise, your bright green glass of goodness is ready to be swallowed. Women seem to be especially keen, but I've seen good blokes rear back in shock at the sight of a drink that looks like slime and contains absolutely no meat or potatoes. Of course, it's packed full of vitamins, and here's the surprise, it tastes really good. Mind you, I've already read that drinking too much of it can do you no good at all due to something called oxalate toxicity. It's a hard road finding the perfect diet drink, isn't it? This time of year is when lots of us dream of heading for a Pacific island, but our view of life there is usually pretty much confined to palm trees, cold drinks, snorkeling and swimming pools. Real life is of course very different. Aucklander Madeline Tobit has lived that life, has a Fijian husband, and in her new novel, The Sea on Our Skin, reveals much about the secret life of island dwellers, legends, stories, and aspects of the imagination that we know almost nothing of. Hi Madeline, it's a pleasure to have you in on Let's Talk. Now, The Sea on Our Skin, I really enjoyed this book. Lovely to read a story about the Pacific. And you've written about a Pacific that's very different from the one that most New Zealand tourists know, haven't you? How do you describe that split between, you know, the tourist life and the real life?
I think it just happens because when tourists go to the Pacific, they want the sunshine and they want the beautiful beaches, and that is there on the Pacific Islands. Whereas obviously real life can't, unfortunately, just be sunshine and beaches.
Yes.
And so all the culture is very strong in the Pacific Islands, and that takes place just slightly off the beaten track.
It's sort of under the surface, isn't it?
Mm.
So tell us about how you discovered this under the surface life.
Very accidentally. When I was 18, myself and my friend Phoebe from school, we went on a gap year and we were supposed to be going to Australia to work. But on the way there, we stopped off in Tonga, and we had just planned to be there for a couple of weeks and have a little bit of sunshine. And someone invited us to go and visit their cousin, or something like that. And this was this lady called Dema, who lived in a village in the middle of nowhere. And her husband was overseas, so she was happy to have us stay. And we just stayed and stayed and stayed. It was amazing.
And how long did you stay for?
I think basically most of our gap year was spent in that village.
How different. I mean, where did you come from in England?
Scotland.
Oh, Scotland, sorry. So the difference between Scotland and a tiny little village in Tonga is just mind-bending, isn't it?
Well, I think that's why we couldn't break away, because we realised that this was an opportunity that will never come our way again. And it was so unexpected, and everything was shocking and exhilarating and all of those kind of things.
Yeah. So what was it that intrigued you most about that sort of life, do you think?
Just that I didn't understand it, and every day I was discovering new stories and new traditions and new ways of living, and I liked them, and people were ridiculously friendly. I mean, I think if Dema had arrived in Scotland, no one would have let her just stay at their house for a year, whereas there was no question of that not being appropriate in the Pacific. It was just come in, have my bed, stay forever.
And the stories and traditions, I mean, that's what this book is full of, isn't it? Is about an island village which has its completely own little imaginative world and things which people believe are an absolute given, even though they're really, really weird to our way of thinking, isn't it? Yeah, so how did you create this? I mean, is it based on a real village, or is it one you've made up completely?
It's based on lots of real villages, and I've sort of picked my favourite little stories and mixed them all together, and then some things which could have happened but actually didn't are in there as well. So it's not one place, but it's everywhere.
You have a wonderful figure there who appears quite often throughout the novel, of this old man of the sea sort of person who is never actually named, or we only get this description of this weird guy with limpets, I think, growing on him, who comes and saves people at particular times, or gives them great messages and things. Is this sort of figure common in that sort of mythology?
Yes and no. There's this big belief in the sea, and that the sea controls your life and your destiny and all of that kind of stuff. And I saw that man as kind of a personification of that belief. Although I have come across some little stories of mysterious figures who come in and out of villages as well.
Now the book also goes a long way to describing the wrench that must be going on in so many, and have done for decades I suppose, so many island families as people leave and see the big wide world and realise that our lives shouldn't be bounded by this tiny little bay or lagoon that we live by. And then people leave and never come back, and there's such a lot of sadness involved with that, isn't there? So, so how do families reconcile that, do you think?
I don't know that they have the answer to it yet. There's this pull between trying to keep the traditions alive because they are so special, but also it's 2012, even on the Pacific Islands, and they need to live.
Yeah, and there are internet cafes and
Yeah,
cell
yeah.
phones and yes, all of that sort of thing. Yes, and I guess the old people know that the young people so often must have to leave to make their way in the world.
Yeah, definitely, because if you want the mobile phone, you have to pay the mobile phone bill. Whereas, you know, before those kind of things existed, you didn't really need to work with money in particular, and then you could have the subsistence village life. But now it's a little more difficult.
Now, somewhere or other, you've picked up a Fijian husband. How did that happen?
Yes, nice souvenir from my trip.
Did you meet him on Tonga or on Fiji?
In Fiji. 6 years after I left Tonga the first time, I came back and saw the family again, and then started traveling. And again, I was supposed to just spend maybe, you know, 4 months traveling in the Pacific and then go home. My last stop was Fiji, 2 weeks, and I stayed for 3 or 4 years.
Met the lovely man, yes.
I did.
And so now here you are living in Auckland. What are you doing here?
I'm teaching English as a foreign language, and he is studying to be an architect. So we really like the fact that Auckland has a combination of sort of European culture and Pacific culture.
Well, it is the biggest Polynesian city in the world, isn't it, in terms of population? So you can still kind of keep in touch with that sort of Polynesian influence in your life, and the laughter and the dancing and everything else?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes I come home and the living room is full of Pacific boys having kava, and it's just like, oh, we're still in the islands. Yep, exactly.
All of that sort of thing, yes. So, and do you fit and feel quite comfortable into that world as well, being the white girl from Scotland? Are there any moments of tension in that?
I'm always the white girl from Scotland, and so even people who know my name will refer to me as Balani. But that's okay, that's inevitable. And there are a few people who probably think that, what is she doing here? But 99% are just so welcoming that it's impossible not to feel right at home.
Now, this is your first novel, I think. Do you have others underway? Or
Yes.
another underway, not others plural, because another singular. Yes.
Number 2 is being written at the moment, but is nowhere near ready to see the world yet.
And it's another Pacific book, is it?
Actually, no, it's set in South America.
Oh, so have you been there too?
Yes, I used to live out in Ecuador and Argentina for a while.
Oh, wow, you are a well-travelled gal, yes.
Yeah.
And so completely different energy there, or are there similarities as well?
Similarities of small communities. I'm really interested in what happens when people are sort of stuck together, whether they would choose to be or not. But everything else is quite different.
Yeah, and I guess it's a fading thing in the world these days too, because those tiny communities, well, as we've already mentioned, are starting to fracture as people go and leave, and much more merging and morphing and things goes on. It's a dying sort of thing, possibly, do you think?
Changing, I reckon. Maybe not dying, because they're still there and they're still cut off from the world. And even if people are leaving and coming back, when they're there, and you're living together. And
How important do you think it is that people's languages stay intact? And there's a lot of talk about this, isn't there? That languages are dying all over the world all the time, and there must be lots of Pacific dialects and island dialects that are disappearing too, with diminishing communities. Do you think that's really important for language to be kept alive if we can do it?
if you can do it, I do. I'm a massive fan of languages from anywhere, but they have to be living. I don't think there's that much use in preserving them as fossils. And so, yeah, in the Pacific Islands, particularly when English is, slowly becoming, very prevalent, I think it's really great if we can teach people their own languages and write them down.
Yes, and record them too, possibly. That's the big thing to do, isn't it? So that you've got the oral tradition kept as well.
Yeah.
But here you are teaching English as a second language, so you're
I know, I'm a hypocrite.
yes, at the same time you're doing the opposite thing in a way.
Yeah.
And how long will it be before your next book's done, do you think? Any idea?
The plan is to have it more or less finished by the end of the year.
Good girl. Thank you very much, Madeline. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Two weeks after the Olympics, the oddball, jagged shape of the London Olympics logo is already fading into history. But Rio de Janeiro is next up, and as you might have guessed, there's already a logo for it. In fact, it's been around for 2 years already. But while London was taking the limelight, it got no traction at all. Here's a piece of video about how Brazilian designers at a company called Tatil put together the shape that's going to become very familiar between now and the next Olympic Games in 2016.
Personalidade, R, e O, é difícil, cara. São 3 letrinhas só, treinava uma, com a Rio de Janeiro.
A gente acreditou que o caminho da escrita manual, ia ser uma boa solução. Através de uma tipografia pronta, dificilmente você ia conseguir isso. Uma se equilibrava da maneira que a gente queria. Então a gente começou a perceber que não só pela exclusividade, pelo fato do projeto ser especial, mas porque a combinação de letras era muito particular e exigia uma solução que fosse específica e pontual.
Ela tem que ser visual, ela tem que ser tátil, ela tem que trazer outros atributos que toquem o ser humano.
E as pessoas precisam ser inspiradas por essa marca.
O abraço parecia ser uma representação muito poderosa, muito simbólica dessa dimensão do acolhimento, do encontro. O grande abraço, né, no principal cartão postal do Rio de Janeiro, né, no Pão de Açúcar.
Pô, tá ali, 3 pessoas abraçadas, sabe, em torno de uma cidade, em torno de um ideal que é o espírito olímpico.
É um Pão de Açúcar em movimento, é como se você estivesse mexendo a cidade.
Tinha que ter e traduzir, era um movimento.
Paixão e transformação são palavras que são ligadas. Paixão gera movimento e movimento transforma.
Transformação exige um esforço.
Estamos falando de esporte, acima de tudo, estamos falando de desafios, de superação, e o movimento é exatamente no meio, né?
Se um dos personagens sai da figura, os outros caem.
Pura energia, fluindo.
Cada hora que você olha para a marca, ela te mostra uma coisa diferente.
Ela é uma marca múltipla, ela é híbrida, ela é viva.
Tridimensionalizável, né?
Essa coisa do Rio, né? Você pode ter aqui um Rio meio que um R aqui, um I no meio e um O.
A forma, ela remete a um coração.
Os personagens, eles parecem estar comemorando alguma coisa.
Quando você olha curvas como essa aqui, essa curva é muito inspirada nos Dois Irmãos.
Ela é a representação do Rio, que é um sinônimo de paixão.
É uma marca que você pode experimentar.
A ideia de você poder entrar na marca, se envolver com o que ela representa de uma maneira íntima, profunda, uma marca escultura, uma cidade escultura.
Hi Carole, great to see you again from the Women's Bookshop on Ponsonby Road. You've got a really intriguing looking book cover there.
It's a brilliant cover, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant cover for a brilliant book. Where'd You Go, Bernadette, by Maria Semple. Now this is a first novel as well, but Maria Semple is a very experienced writer. She's been a script writer and a writer for television, so she's got, she's really skilled at sharp dialogue. Fantastic premise, this. Bernadette Fox is they live in New York. She's a wonderful, incredibly creative and innovative architect, and she designed an extraordinary, stunning, completely unusual house some years ago, and has never designed anything since.
Right.
And you find out why in the novel. She's married to a guy who is the sort of the top creative guy in Microsoft. So they're both extremely brainy, extremely creative, very talented, and they have this gorgeous daughter who they adore. And she had problems when she was a baby, and so had to give her a lot of attention. But she is super bright, doing brilliantly well at school, and they have a wonderful family relationship. I mean, the girl and the mother particularly are very, very close. But Bernadette is totally wacky.
Bernadette is the...
Bernadette's the mother.
Bernadette's the mother. Okay, yes.
She's the architect.
The lapsed architect.
The lapsed
yes.
architect. She's totally wacky and bizarre. They tell the daughter that if she comes top of the class and gets straight A's and all the rest of it, she can have whatever she wants, more or less, at the end of the year, and she, of course, does it. And
because being a top man at Microsoft, he's got oodles of money, presumably.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Money's not a problem. So she decides, the daughter decides, that what she wants is for the whole family to go to Antarctica for Christmas. So they plan this trip to Antarctica, except that Bernadette is worried about seasickness, is worried about the cold, is going to go along with it because it's what her beloved daughter wants. And all sorts of extraordinary things happen, and in the end Bernadette disappears. And it's just hilarious. It's incredible satire. There's a particularly wonderful sequence about the mothers and the parents at the school where their child goes, and they're going to have this special event for parents and so on to raise money, this big afternoon tea thing at this gorgeous house, and there's a disaster happens. It's to do with Bernadette. It's very, very, very funny. I mean, the woman insists, the mother who owns this gorgeous house, insists that the blackberries growing up the bank to Bernadette's house have to be removed to make everything look immaculate, and so she has them all removed with huge earth diggers, and of course there's a landslide. It's very funny. It's totally over the top. Yes. Totally over the top, but extremely satirical about American values, about being brainy, about being wealthy, about the things that people, you know, will fight for that perhaps aren't worth fighting for.
It's interesting that Maria Semple's a scriptwriter, because another name that popped into my head when you were talking about that was Linda LaPlante, who's a British excellent novelist who's also been responsible for terrific TV series. And there's something about their observation of dialogue and the way they know how plot works and how story arcs should rise and fall. So I presume that's why, partly why it's so good.
I loved it. It's fantastic. And Jonathan Franzen's written a recommendation for it. He says, I tore through this book with heedless pleasure. And it is, I mean, it is a total delight. You take it with a grain of salt because it's complete satire, but it is hilariously funny. I laughed out loud, and you love the characters.
It sounds like we're one of those books, if you're reading in a public place, you're sitting there sort of giggling away and feeling very silly because nobody else can share your pleasure. And books like that are so rare, aren't they?
Oh, they are. Genuinely funny books, and books that work as satire, I think, is, you know, it's fantastic.
Where'd you go, Bernadette? Sounds like a really good one.
And they do get to Antarctica.
Good.
Yes.
So the Southern Hemisphere. Hemisphere get to look in. Thank you so much, Carole.
Pleasure.
Thanks for watching. Next week we've got long-time parenting expert Ian Grant coming in to explain the need for today's fathers to step up to the plate and dare to win.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.